Hi people, it's Sarkovist here, hope you're doing well, and today I have yet another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video for you, and while we've got some games going in the background, I wanted to focus in on a topic as to why I don't play meta decks. But straight away, I must say, this is not to take aim or to criticise anyone who does play meta decks. After all, Master Duel is a ranked PvP focused game. This is just about sharing my thoughts and my perspective on the matter. And I also think it's worth creating a distinction, at least in my mind, is while I don't play meta decks, I do believe I play competitive decks. So these are decks where they aren't the top tier pre-calculated decks that you might see as the number one in the league tables, but they are decks where I am at least trying to win, and those are the ones that you will see me share on this channel, not because they're considered meta, just because I think they have a decent chance of winning in a match, generally speaking. So I'd say the first and main reason I don't tend to play meta decks is that it's very important for me to thematically connect with my cards. I have to enjoy the stories behind them, the artwork has to be good, and unfortunately of the meta decks, for whatever reason they're just not connecting with me. I don't think they're anything terrible, they're just not for me. And a big boost any deck gets in my book is a deck that is either based on the original anime, because that's what I think of even still when I think of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist Kingdom, especially if it's one of the original monsters. When I first started doing these videos on the channel, Red Eyes Black Dragon was a big appeal to me because I liked Joey's character as the underdog who gradually got really good over the course of the series. And then I'm also liking decks where they have sort of a callback to the original series. So right now I'm playing with Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon because to me it feels like almost a spiritual successor to the likes of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Red Eyes Black Dragon. So while the cards aren't specifically speaking to me because they were in the original series, I do like them because they feel like a bit of an evolution. I also like some of the new Blue Eyes cards, like Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon, because it's building on the Blue Eyes theme that I remember from when I was younger. If it was just the old stuff, admittedly it could feel a little bit boring. There is definitely a limit to this sentiment though. As I said at the beginning, I wanted to create a distinction between while I don't play meta, I do want to be a bit competitive, and if we're just talking thematically and nostalgically, there is no deck I want to make more than one based around Slifer the Sky Dragon. I have to admit, I thought that was the coolest card when I was younger. It was featured in my favourite episode, I think in the entire series, where it's Yugi versus Strings. Don't know if anyone actually remembers that, but they have it where Yugi goes up against the God card for the first time, and he wins it in the duel, but he doesn't strictly defeat Slifer, which I think would have been wrong to show the dragon being defeated. He manages to outsmart Strings by creating an infinite loop that decks him out, like taking his own strategy against him, and then he wins Slifer. And I just remember that so fondly from my childhood, and I never had Slifer when I was younger. As much as I wanted a God card, they were very elusive, and you had to spend quite a lot of money to get them when I was younger. But I really want to make a God card deck, but at this moment in time, I'm struggling a little bit to know how I can make it competitive. There are a few support cards I've found for Slifer, but I'm keeping an eye on it, but at the moment I can't find a way to make it that strong. If anyone, by the way, has any tips for making a legitimately viable Slifer deck, please do let me know, because I would love to make a deck around Sky Dragon. Another reason is I like to have a unique deck if I can, because the thing about having a meta deck is that because they're so well known, everyone's coming up with formulas for how do we beat it, what are the best counterplays, and then as a result everyone knows the counterplays to those decks. I think it's the reason things like Max C are so popular is because people know that combo decks are so strong, so Max C is naturally a counter to that. But if you've got something like a Red Eyes deck or a Galaxy Eyes deck, I don't see these played too often. I see Red Eyes every now and then. Galaxy Eyes, I think I've only seen once in my entire time playing. Maybe that's just my unique experience, but it doesn't come up that much. So by having this deck, people are often caught off guard by what I can do. I think the amount of times I probably just completely shocked someone with number 62 coming out with over 10k of damage, or playing a Tachyon Transmigration from the hand. They just don't know what to expect. That said, not to say I don't have some predictable popular cards in the deck. I do have two Ashes. I just can't get away from the value in that card. It's so effective. But I do have 2 Ashes. I do have a Monster Reborn. So there is some predictability in there. But by and large, it's not super well known. And that, in its own right, gives it a bit of an advantage. And then finally, there's the underdog value of playing a non-meta deck. Because I find that if I use a deck which isn't considered to be ultra competitive and I'm still able to win, that is extremely satisfying. But if I choose a deck, hypothetically speaking, that is tailored to win in the majority of circumstances and I win, all I feel is, well, look, I had the better deck, so I was probably going to win there, wasn't I? And then if I lose with such a deck, the feeling is, wow, that's quite frustrating because I chose what should have been the best deck and yet I've still lost. But if we think about my decks I typically use, if I win with them, it's very fun to win. And if I lose, it's not the end of the world because we weren't using the best setup to begin with. So even though this game does force us to play ranked at the moment, we do have a sort of casual mentality we can wrap around ranked. But look guys, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You have to keep in mind there is obviously a big disadvantage to this mentality. It means that you will go up against decks every now and then, especially as you get to the higher ranks, where you simply can't do anything and you stand very little chance of beating them. And when you get a couple of those games in a row, I can't pretend there's not a demoralising element to that. But I think you got to take the losses with the wins at the end of the day. Going into a duel, it's a 1v1. Someone has to win, someone has to lose, unless you manage to pull off a draw. I don't think that's ever happened to me yet, but it can happen. But by and large, someone's winning, someone's losing, and sometimes the loser will have to be you. You know, it doesn't mean you're a bad player, it just means in that particular instance, they had to win, and then you'll naturally have those games where you win and your opponent is the loser. And it's through that attrition that you'll become more skilled and better with your cards. But I think at the end of the day, there's a philosophy element to it, and the way I view video games is I've never, although I play a lot of games where there's a competitive element to them, I like a lot of online shooters like Halo and Call of Duty, I've never been, I guess, like a mid-maxer, someone who does whatever it takes to win, because you have to kind of take a step back and think, this is a video game at the end of the day, and unless you're actually going professional, is there any point in stressing that hard about winning? And I don't think there is. I largely use all video games, to sit back and relax, and if they're stressing me out, if they're frustrating me, they're not worth it. They're not doing their job, because you know, that's what my real job's for, right? I don't need my hobby to also inflict that. So there is a philosophical element to it, like how do you view games, what are they for? If you are trying to get professional, I suppose there is reason to care that much, but if you're using them as your hobby, your means of relaxing, I don't believe it's right to push everything into it. So that was my explanation on why I don't currently play meta decks. Naturally, there is always time for me to change my mind. One day I might get that competitive spark in my heart, but as of the moment, I'm just having fun and enjoying Master Duel. As always, people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.